Hi, my name is Zach Fisher, and welcome to another one of my weekly or monthly or daily, whatever I decide, recordings on technology. Today I'm going to be talking about enterprise applications. Last episode, I talked about um, the internet versus the intranet and how the intranet is similar for a company as the internet is for an individual. But today I'm going to be talking about how the intranet has revolutionized the way that we do business, and I'm going to give a few examples. Um, so last time I talked about the intranet and the way that um, it it revolutionized the way that we did business. And one of the examples that I gave was email, another was financial planning. So the intranet, and companies have this term, and it's called ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning. And this keeps track of all of the money that's coming in and going out of the company. And there's two major vendors who deal with enterprise resource planning at large scales. One is Oracle, and the other is SAP. And so if you're looking into enterprise resource planning in this really very common business application, you'll probably run into two vendors, either Oracle or SAP. And this has revolutionized the way that paperwork is done, things are kept track of, and planning is done across very, very large companies. In the past, there would be millions and millions of pieces of paper that had to be kept track of and filed. And if you can imagine the amount of people that have to deal with that in a company like the size of the East India Trading Company, that must have been absolutely ridiculous. So Oracle and SAP Enterprise Resource Planning, extremely huge application. One example of an enterprise resource application that is used and has to tie into one of these two databases is a quoting tool that I use and on a very often. And what I do is I put in, I quote it. The quoting tool, which is another application, puts in, if it got booked, how much money it was, and then it goes into the database of Oracle and SAP, and all of the financial people can help keep track of it. Another one that would be common that would feed data into one of these databases and we would use data. So this is a quoting tool. Another common application that would be feeding data into one of these two enterprise resource tools that have databases on the back end that's where they store all the data, is Concur. And Concur keeps track of travel and expenses regarding travel. So enterprise resource planning, really, really big, important application. Typically, it is it requires a lot of resources. It's very expensive because what accountants do is they oftentimes will run large amounts of queries on this. What happens if we do this? What happens if we do that? And there's large quantities of data that get put into the enterprise resource planning applications. Now, this has, like, just like the internet has really changed the way that we have done business, or we have conducted our lives as people. All of these internal applications really have changed the way businesses have conducted themselves in the past, and now into the future they're completely changing. Another example is this is something that is pretty common across businesses, is sync and share. File. So as you can imagine, if you're at a company and you want to work on a project or share your files, it's pretty common and almost mandatory nowadays to have an application where you can sync your files on your computer and share it and work on it with people all around the world. Okay, so these can be people in all around the world, and this is your file, and this is you sharing it to NYC or London, and working on a project simultaneously, having people leverage the file that you already created and not need to recreate it simultaneously all across the world. Really awesome application, really awesome thing that's being used in almost all businesses. Another one, it's pretty obvious here, is going to be Oracle, or excuse me, not Oracle, Exchange, Microsoft Exchange, so email. And the most common is Microsoft Exchange or Exchange Server. That's what's being run. That's the business application that I'm talking about here. And this application obviously allows people to email large attachments, small attachments, archive, do all of the report phishing attacks, all those types of things that you typically do with email. And this is also the file server that was actually run, the sync and share, that was actually run on that's either run on an object store or a NAS store, just so you know. And this exchange is going to be run on block storage, and also a large amount of servers. So, so those are three typical business applications that are being used to do business internally. Now, you can imagine that there's also businesses that are being business applications that are being created to help the businesses um, externally as well. So in the industrial world, um, airplanes now have thousands of sensors on them. And all of that data gets sent over um, to the companies. So the companies like GE, who makes the jet engines, they have to store all that data, and then they run queries against that data to help them design better jet engines in the future. Every time there's a fault, they have tons of information on it, whereas in the past, they wouldn't be able to see every single possible event on that engine. It also allows them to do things like predictive analytics. A great example of this is if a jet engine is going to be going through a large amount of deserty areas, there are different parts that will wear out faster. And if the engine is not, then those parts do not need to be replaced as often. So it can save companies money. Also, they can bake in more efficient rotational speeds of the jet engine, saving fuel costs. I think one of their big things was, I think GE saved 1% fuel costs in their most recent engine, which is huge in that industry, translates to billions and billions of dollars saved for a big company like Delta. So um, there's other applications that are specific um, to how a company is doing business, and almost every business, every Fortune 500 for sure has their own internal applications. You just have to give it some thought, and I'm sure that every business has these applications. So that's a little bit about um, business applications and how those business applications are transforming the way that business is done, just like the internet has transformed the way that we live as consumers. Same kind of thing has happened with the way that businesses are managed at a global scale. I'm Zach Fisher. Like, link, subscribe, and be sure to stay tuned.